This exciting episode is sponsored by Surfshark. Scott Brown here. See this window right here? We need to trim it, and we need to trim it with the subject of today's exciting episode, which is the Milwaukee track saw. The single battery powered 18 volt Milwaukee track saw. The monster of Frankenstein of track saws. They looked at all the other brands, took a bit of everything and chucked it into one saw. And that's what today's exciting episode is all about. Have you ever wondered though, what is the point of a track saw or plunge saw? Don't know what you call it. How is it different to a circular saw? Can't you just buy a circular saw and keep it straight? Well, the track saw is all about accuracy and clean cuts. So I made a video back in 2018 about track saws and how every builder needs one. Since then, there's been a lot of innovation in track saws. The main one being the fact that they are cordless. Like for example, I've got the saw there with the battery in it, and this track and a couple of clamps, and that's all I need to do this window trim. See, first Makita and Festool came out with track saws that needed 2 batteries to run, and then battery technology advanced, and they came out with the Makita 40 volt single battery track saw, which I reviewed pretty much 2 years ago. Since then, I've also reviewed the Bosch track saw that only needs 1 battery. While all these companies were making different iterations of track saws, Milwaukee hadn't made any. And I guess the advantage of waiting so long to see how everyone else does it is you can copy all the good ideas. And they've come out with this one that only needs 1 battery, and that 1 battery fits on all their other tools as well. There we go, ready to cut. Now this video is brought to you by Surfshark, the sponsor of today's exciting episode. It's not brought to you by Milwaukee, but they did send this to me for free. I will say though that Makita sent me the saw for free as well, and Bosch as well, so I don't really have an incentive to put one saw over the other. I'm just going to try and be honest. There you go. Here we go. We've got a fairly even gap all the way across. Clean and accurate. Now, in order to get that done on a circular saw, I mean, it is possible, don't get me wrong. You could do it. It would be very easy to mess it up. All it takes is 1 slip and you've destroyed your beautiful cedar window. So this is a much more foolproof method, and I think it's a good example of what you can do with a track saw. We've been using this a lot over the last couple of months as we're cutting up panels to make a kitchen. The only handheld tool you really want to run along a melamine sheet plywood is a track saw because it prevents the splintering, or at least in theory it prevents splintering. So I cross-cut all of these, which is a fair amount. We're starting to get this chip out here, but to be absolutely fair, I might have hit a few screws with the blade. Yeah, there were some sparks flying when I went over that. And that one there too. So it's the original blade. I cut all of that laminate plywood, which is notoriously bad for blades, and I went through some screws, so I think that's pretty good. Like most track saws, it takes a 165mm blade, or 6.5 inches for those of you in the States. So I just realized that I can no longer use the Milwaukee track saw for this job, purely because I only have this one blade that's suitable for the melamine. The Makita blades that I have for a track saw, this one in particular, is very, very thin. And the Milwaukee track saw has a riving knife, which is thicker than the kerf of this blade. So if I try and use that with that blade, the riving knife will just get caught in the cut. Now, riving knives are a good thing. Imagine this is a timber you've cut, or you're going to cut, and this is the blade coming up. So the blade comes through, cuts a line, and then after the blade is cut through, you have a little void here, and sometimes there can be tension in the timber that makes the timber come back together after it's been cut. And then what it does is it pinches the blade up here, and that's how you get kickback. Kickback is just when the saw has gone through the cut, and because it's pinched, it can't go any further, and then the saw just launches backwards. It doesn't happen very often with track saws. It's happened to me twice, including that clip I just played. With a table saw, for example, you should really have a riving knife because it's electric and there's a lot of power running through it, and if it pinches and you're not holding the timber correctly, that timber can go flying in your face. So with the track saw, yes, it's a good idea because it prevents that. But the downside is the riving knife has a certain thickness. Whatever blade you get has to be that same thickness. Now, I could take the riving knife off, I think. There's a couple of screws there, but I don't know, it feels like the wrong thing to do, and I don't know if it affects other things. It'll probably affect the splinter guard that's on the track. Yeah, so there's that. It's not a big deal. It's just something to consider. Now, riving knives reminds me of the Festool track saw. Like I said at the start of this video, this is a Frankenstein of track saws. They took a bit of everything. They took the riving knife from Festool, they took the depth adjustment from Festool, they even took that little splinter guard window thingy that swaps out from a window to a rubber guard from Festool. That allows the saw to put a bit of pressure down on the thing you're cutting, so while the blade is spinning up, that guard should stop the wood fibers from lifting up also. That has a little bit of burring, but really not much. And same with that. There's a little bit, but not much. They even included the scoring function that Makita has, which I'll talk about in a minute. Honestly, it feels like they almost nailed everything. Like I said before, it runs off the one 18-volt battery, the same kind of 18-volt batteries that most Milwaukee tools run off, which is great. I'm a one battery kind of guy. If you need two on the tool and you need 2 charging. That's 4 batteries. The RPM is between 2,500 to 5,600 and it's adjusted via the speed dial down here. And the max cut depth at 90 degrees is 59 millimeters. I'll put the imperial. And the diagonal max cut is 44 millimeters. So there's a few things that I really care about when it comes to track saws. Accuracy is obviously important. Usability is another big one. And under usability, I would put things like depth adjustment, blade change, things like that. And the depth adjustment here is great. If you're familiar with the Festool track saw or the Bosch track saw, you'll be familiar with this style. You just push it in on the side here, up, down, up, down, up, down, which is very, very quick and very, very easy. And they also have 2 different depth indicators. The double line is when the saw is on the track, and the single line is when it's by itself. Blade change, they have this little dial there. You're able to go, and it locks it in. And then you pull a tool out of the handle here, and then with that tool, you're able to loosen that and take it off. Now, one of the first questions that I had when I found out that Milwaukee were making a track saw is what kind of track would it go on? And would it be compatible with the Makita? The answer is yes. I think they do have slight differences, however. When I put this on here and I plunge down, it actually hits the splinter guard. Because of that reason, I tend to just keep the Makita on the Makita track and the Milwaukee on the red one. Now, there's a couple of features that Makita have always done well with their track saws that Milwaukee have definitely adopted. And one of them is the anti-tip feature on the back here. You push this button and then you turn this and that little piece of metal underneath the aluminium track locks underneath here. Now the purpose of that is if you are doing a 45-degree cut or a 48-degree cut, because that's how far this thing can tilt, the saw won't tip over. That little piece of metal is holding it. But it's important to note that although the saws work on both tracks, the anti-tip function doesn't. See how much? There's just a bit too much play. Now the other thing that Milwaukee have adopted, that Makita have been doing for years, is this little thing here. This is the scoring function. You push that in, and it allows the blade to only plunge about 3 millimeters. And then you do a cut all the way across, you get a nice clean edge, and then you pull it out again, and then the blade will go the full depth. That is pretty important when you're cutting melamine, for example, because you can cut that nice melamine edge without all the pressure of the full depth cut. There are a couple of things that I really like about the Makita track saw that Milwaukee have definitely adopted, which is fantastic, but there's a glaring omission on the Milwaukee track saw. Something they've left out which I just don't understand. I was going through the manual, I was going through everything when I got the saw, and then I kind of got to the end of the manual and went, wait a minute, there's no Bluetooth, there's no dust extraction, there's nothing? I mean, it comes with a dust bag. This little thing here fits on like that, has a little zip, but everybody knows that these are just dust catchers. They don't really reduce the dust in your work area. There is no ability to turn on a vacuum with the saw. See, one of the advantages with track saws is you have this big enclosure. So that keeps the dust there and shoots it into one direction, which is usually towards this port. And from my understanding, Milwaukee's done a lot of work to make sure that that efficiently goes to the port, which is fantastic. But with the corded track saws, the ones that first came out, they're kind of like this drop saw here. You plug it into a vacuum nearby, turn on the saw and the vacuum goes. Great, fantastic. So when they started bringing out these battery ones, they had to get around that. So the way that Makita have gotten around that is with a little chip. You've got a little chip in here, you turn that on, and also in the vacuum there's a Bluetooth chip as well. And once the two chips are on, the vacuum goes. So although not perfect, that is a system that works. Milwaukee didn't do anything. There's no Bluetooth. There's no Bluetooth vacuum, there's no Bluetooth battery, there's no Bluetooth anything related to dust extraction. Very disappointing. Now, I have to admit, I do like to complain about problems, but I also think I'm someone who tries to find solutions. And here is one for this sort of problem. You grab this little thing here, plug that in there like that, plug your vacuum in, make sure your vacuum is in manual mode. You grab the little receiver there, the other part of this tool, strap it to your Milwaukee track saw, and that's me turning the vacuum on. But that's with the button, right? It also works like this. And that's because this little receiver is picking up the vibration of the tool and turning the vacuum on. So it works the same way. So that's a great little solution, but for this little thing here, this thing I can hold in one hand, $300 here in New Zealand. If you buy the Milwaukee track saw, maybe it costs you $800-900, and then you have to spend another $300 on top of that just so the vacuum turns on when you pull the trigger of the saw. That's not great. And I'm not sure if Milwaukee make something like this, but if they do, I feel like it should be included with the saw, all one price. Dust extraction is important with track saws, and if it matters to you, just keep that in mind. So this is the part of the exciting episode where we compare the two in terms of which ones I prefer and which ones you should maybe consider getting. And wrap up with a general conclusion about what I think of the Milwaukee track saw. But first, we have to thank the people that help make all of this possible. It's sponsors like Surfshark that help us grow our own food and renovate our own house and make this whole channel work, so I really appreciate it. Surfshark is a VPN that helps you secure your online data among many other things. Surfshark allows you to connect to popular websites like Amazon, AliExpress, Netflix, things like that, and still get access to TV shows that you otherwise wouldn't get access to because of your location. For example, when you're traveling, if there's a Netflix show that you're watching back at home and then you go overseas and you still want to watch it, you can do it with a VPN like Surfshark. It can also be a security thing, like if you're going to an Airbnb and you only have access to public Wi-Fi, you might not feel so secure doing work-related stuff. While with a VPN like Surfshark, you don't have to worry about that because all your data will be encrypted. They also offer online security combos to monitor your personal data, check for potential breaches, get real-time breach alerts, and protect your identity. And they also offer unlimited devices on one account. So if you are interested in supporting the channel and checking out Surfshark for yourself, use my code below and you'll get 3 months extra for free at surfshark.deals/SBC. So who should get the Milwaukee, who should get the Makita? Now, there isn't a lot between the two, if that's what you're deciding. This is maybe 100 grams lighter, so that's not really a factor. The depth adjustment is a lot better on the Milwaukee, so that's a big selling point, I think. They both run off one battery. They both have the scoring function. They both have the anti-tipping function. They're really very comparable. I think what it comes down to is what you value. Do you value only having one battery platform? Maybe you've already got Milwaukee tools. Well then, obviously, just get the Milwaukee track saw. You're not going to lose much on here. Do you value dust extraction? Is that like the most important thing to you? Well, then the Makita wins, but you also have to get the Makita vacuum. So it's only circumstance that I turn to this one. I've got the vacuums already, and I've got the blades. But I'll just as happily use this one. But you don't necessarily have to have a cordless track saw. It's very handy having a cordless one when you just want to whip into the job, trim a door, trim a window like I did before. But if you're doing what I've been doing for the last few weeks, which is building cabinets in a garage like this, it doesn't really matter if it's cordless or corded. Honestly, it doesn't make a difference. Cordless, the battery lasts all day. Like, I put that battery in that Milwaukee track saw and I don't even think about it. Same with the Makita. That's why I haven't even talked about it in this review, because I kind of think it's irrelevant at this point. It's going to last you all day, maybe 2 days, maybe 3 days on one battery. But having said that, I'm in a garage. I can plug it in no problem as well. And because I'm plugging a hose in at the same time, having something dangling off the back of the saw kind of doesn't matter. Alright, so to wrap things up, the Milwaukee track saw, they've copied a lot of great features off other track saws, and they've made a good one because of that. And if you have Milwaukee tools and you've been holding out to buy a track saw, you're going to be pretty happy with this one. If you have a Makita track saw and you're worried that you're missing out, don't worry. There's only a couple of things that I prefer on the Milwaukee, and they're not deal breakers. If you have a corded one and you're dying to get a cordless one because of some of the reasons, some of the benefits that I've experienced, then, I mean, it's a good option. If you want to check out some of the other videos I've done about track saws, I'll pop them maybe here or in the description below. And I'll see you in the next exciting episode.